And welcome everyone to South Huron Council meeting tonight, May 15th. And welcome those that are attending in the gallery and those who are attending from home this evening. We have all members of council present except for two at this point, so it gives us quorum. And I'll ask everyone to make sure that their cell phones are either off or on mute. And as we call this meeting to order, I'll ask everyone to rise for Royal Canada, please. Thank you, everyone. You can please be seated and we'll proceed with our land acknowledgement at this point. As we gather, we are reminded that the municipality of South Huron is situated on Treaty 29 land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. As a community, we have a responsibility to honor and respect this territory's significance for the Indigenous peoples who lived and continue to live upon it and whose practices and spiritualities were tied to the land and continue to develop in relationship to the territory and its other inhabitants today. In the spirit of reconciliation and truth, we acknowledge the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Thank you, and we'll move to item number 2 on the agenda. Ms. Collison, please.
Mayor Finch, I was wondering if council would consider moving item 14.1.1 to item 4.3. It is a correspondence item, however, it could also form part of a presentation as well.
And to proceed with mover, how would you like to proceed? Moved by Councillor Denby, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries us 5. Thank you. Moving along, Ms. Collison.
So that was the recommendation moved by Councillor Denemy, seconded by Councillor Vaughn, that South Huron Council approves the agenda as amended, and that was all asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there disclosure of pecuniary interest at the or general nature of this at this time? Not seeing any. Thank you. Presentations. We welcome Paul Seebach from Seebach and Company. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, nice to be here in person. First time in a few years. Our presentation has kind of 3 parts. It's there you'll find in your package the full financial statements. That's required under the accounting standards, plus Kirkton Woodham Community Center, the pool, and Exeter BIA. I've also included, and we'll spend most of the time on a 2-page kind of council report, supplementary report that has a little more information. Then there is our management letter stating that there were no outstanding issues or conflicts at the end of our audit. This year we performed our audit 100% in person. The last couple of years we kind of done half, sometimes here, some remote, but it's much better to be. I see Rebecca smiling. It's much better to have us here in person. At least it's nicer to be here. So after our audit, as per the management letter, we didn't find any unusual transactions or significant matters to bring the council's attention. There's no outstanding issues. Generally, we deal with most things during the year. So by the year end, there's no surprises. And from the finance department, we received complete cooperation, and from other departments. This was the first year, we'd been here for many years dealing with Sandy, and This year was Maggie, and I think it was a pretty smooth transition. Everything seemed to go good. And we're here presenting. We audit more than 10 municipalities, and this is the first one that's completed and the first one we're presenting. So that's good for Maggie and the finance department. Just a bit about the financial statements. They're on a consolidated basis, includes the BIA and the Kirkton Wood and Pool. One thing about our statements I usually say is they're presented on a accrual basis. We're required to do that by the province, where when you do your budget, it's more of a cash basis. The biggest differences are we show depreciation as an expense, and where on your budget, you show the capital 100% and you show it being financed by either debt, the mill rate, or reserves. Another item is we only expense the interest portion of long-term debt. You raise in your budget, it shows money raised for the principal and the interest. Then our statements, we show reserves, but we don't show, we show that as an allocation of surplus. We don't show that as income or expense, where of course that's a big part of your budget. So that being said, when you look at the statements, they show a surplus of $6.7 million, which is 1.9 million more than that was budgeted. But when you look on a cash basis and what Maggie has prepared, basically your surplus was 355,000, like when you look at by department and on a cash basis, etc. The most of that is we don't expense the capital and the reserve funds, etc. But that all being said, we all use the same numbers. We have the same trial balance, same general ledger. It's just the presentation is what's required by the ministry. Some main items, we talked about the surplus. You had a large year for capital. You spent over $11.5 million on capital, kind of spread out $3,025,000 transportation, $3,084,000 on water, sewer, landfill. And you all know you spent a lot of money at the 2 recreation centers, $6.3 million. That makes up the most of the 11.5. You were to spend 19 million. Some of the projects weren't completed. A lot of them were water, sewer. Some of your association with the Grand Bend wasn't completed. Some of the other work wasn't completed. A lot of that will end up being done this year. The main effect on that is that if you had done all the work, your debt would be a little higher because you would have financed more of the debt for the 2 arenas. And you also have more money in the bank at the end of the year because you didn't do everything, and your reserves are higher because you didn't pull all the money out of the reserves. You'll do that this year. Speaking of the debt, the municipal debt at the end of the year was $21.8 million. Later, there's a schedule for that. You made your regular payments, and then you also borrowed money for the 2 arena, and we'll see that later. The province kind of regulates how much you can borrow in payments, and you're well within that, probably you're at 25% of the maximum you could do. Your reserves at the year end were 25.8 million, an increase 1.6. If you'd done all your capital project, pulled out the money or pulled out the reserves for water, sewer, etc., they would have been much lower, but you'll do that all this year when some of those deferred projects are done this year. And also deferred revenue, you had unused federal gas tax and a provincial capital road grant of 1.3 million at the end of the year that you use for this year. If you go to our report, supplementary information, it's basically the balance sheet shows cash is higher, and that's it'd be the statement before that, maybe. Yeah, correct. So your cash is higher. You didn't do all your projects and had a bit of a surplus. So it's just basically why your cash is higher. Taxes receivable are pretty normal. You do a good job collecting your taxes. Accounts receivable are higher. There's some HST outstanding that you'll get because of larger projects. The other current assets are prepaid expenses, such as insurance, etc. You have $9.4 million in investments. That's split between the provincial fund of $5,094,000, Scotia Bank high interest savings account, $4,330,000. When you look at the income statement, your interest is higher because you received higher interest during the year. You were getting by the end 3% versus 0.5% or so. long-term receivables, those are your tile drain loans that are recoverable from the farmers who have taken them out. So at the end of the year, $31.5 million of assets compared to last year, 28.3. Things you owed at the end of the year, accounts payables, they're higher. You had a large payment owing to the contractor for the South Huron Recreation Center for 1.7 million. That's why your payables are so much higher. Deferred revenue, we kind of talked about that. A lot of that are grants that weren't spent plus development charges, 1.4 million that you've recovered but haven't used. Every year we're required to put down a figure for landfill closure costs. Your engineer comes up with this, and that's how much money you need today to pay to close the landfill site and look after it for X number of years. Basically, we have 3 landfill sites. One's open, the large one, obviously South Huron, and it's set aside for the liabilities 5.2. And then Stephen Township is closed, 729,000. And Osborne is just 71,000, not as much maintenance there. The municipal debt, we've talked about that, and we'll see a schedule later, 22 million. So when you take the assets, current liabilities, you have net financial assets for negative 4 million. It's gone more negative this year, but the reason of that is you've added more debt and the assets are actually below the line. So you shouldn't be concerned that your debt or your net financial assets are lower. It's because you have more debt and you spent that on capital assets. Tangible capital assets, we've talked about the 11.5 added. So the book value there is 114 million. So the difference between that and your assets is the accumulated surplus, 110 million. 90 million of that is tied up in assets in your surplus. The unfunded landfill liabilities, the 6 million. Reserves, 25 million. And the other surplus is just the surpluses in the BIA and the Kirkton Woodham Community Center and pool. Does anyone have any questions on your balance sheet or where you stood financially at the end of December?
Any questions from members of council? Councillor Neeb, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question for you, but I'm just wondering where we're sitting with our annual repayment loan, what percentage we're at as of December 2022.
Maggie, can you do that?
Yep, through your Mayor Finch, because the debenture is not finalized, it's hard for staff to estimate because we don't know what that final interest rate is going to come in at. There's been a lot of fluctuations since the beginning of the project. I wouldn't assume that it's going to fluctuate more than what we originally anticipated, but until we go to do that final debenture. And at that time, I would suggest that staff kind of prepare where we're sitting at with that new debt.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Paul.
The next page is an income statement. It shows a budget and 5-year history. Taxation, 11.1 million, pretty much what's budgeted. Supplementaries were higher. Your UMF grant from the province, you've been fortunate, it actually went up during the year. It's almost back to levels before. The gas tax is a little higher. You used prior year's gas tax. You budgeted for this year, but you used a bit of this year's and last year's. And then various grants. Other capital grants are mostly for roads, etc. And then you have your user charges, large amounts for water and sewer, pretty close to what was budgeted. When you get down to recreation, you'll see that you've kind of rebounded last year in 2022. Your facilities were shut down for January. Sometimes a busy month, but you can see where you were prior COVID, 2019, 700,000, and you dipped 386, 394, now back to 572. So that's recovered well. Other fees, etc. We've talked, you have higher bank interest just because of interest rates on, if you get 1% or 2% more on $9 million, that's $200,000. So 756,000, much over budget. So 26,713,000 of total revenue. Your various expenses, some are a little higher. Waste collection is higher. I think there's mostly fuel, transportation costs there. Recreation is lower than budgeted, but higher than prior years. That they kind of fall with your activity. Then we show the capital. In this statement, we expense the capital expenditures and then also show the transfers. So you can see your total on a more of a cash basis, your total expenditures are 29.8 million. When we go back to how we produce the statements and the audited financial statements, you come back to the 19 million because you're not including reserve transfers and also the capital, and you come back to the budget or the surplus in the financial statement, $6.7 million. When you convert your statements to the way we do it, the budgeted amount was 4.8, so you're about 1.9 million over. A lot of that's interest and et cetera. When you look at the main financial statements, the only things I would go over are the auditor's report is a clean audit report. So no issues there. There is a page on municipal debt. Shows the 21.8 million in your circumstances. 17.5 million of your debt is associated with water and sewer projects. So they're financed mostly by water and sewer rates. The remaining 4.2 million are for the swimming pool, the interim funding for the South Huron Exeter Arena and the Stephen Arena. And that adds up to 4.2 million. And that, so of the 21 million, really only 4 million is financed through your mill rate. On that audited statements, there is a statement on the reserves. Total reserves, $25.8 million. I would note under environmental, there's $6.3 million that is dedicated just for water and sewer projects. So, you know, as a council, you can't get your hands on all that money for everything you want to do. 6.4 million of that is tied up for water and sewer projects. The other statements to go over quickly, there's the Kirkton Woodham Community Center Board. The big item there was they did some capital projects. They put in some new ball lights. They added a fridge. So that was 17,000. So their bank is down from 51,000 to 27,000. They were hit pretty hard in 2021 by COVID. It kind of rebounded. So their income's up about $11 million. The statements do show a deficit, and that's only because on this statement we expense capital. So that if you hadn't expensed the capital, they would have had a small surplus of $1,293. So they're kind of more back to normal. Similar with the swimming pool, you contribute 25,000 to that, and they had more activity this year, and they were able to get lifeguards, etc. So they had a pretty more back to normal year. Their income was up 10,000. Of course, their expenses are up too. So they had a $951 surplus. So basically break even. The BIA statements, a little more activity there too. The levy collected from all the businesses is 75,000. They had an awards gala, created revenue of $6,174, so $113,000 of income. And their main activities were the Santa Claus Parade, the Ladies' Night Out, and Home of the White Squirrel. They also spent the flowers, and the banner was 9,000. Then general administration, that's wages, rent, phone, internet, the awards gala. So they had a surplus of $9,318, which they can carry forward. So I would say in closing, you know, your municipality had a more normal year, 2022 versus COVID 2021. You were able to complete most of your capital projects, which was good. You ended your year in a stronger financial position, higher bank, investments reserves. Part of that's because you enjoy all your capital, but you're still in a good position. And as stated in the debt, you have 2 new loans for the recreation center and arena updates. Are there any questions on anything? I know a lot of information, but I think that generally it's a good report.
Sounds like a great report. Any questions from members of council? Sounds like you've nailed it very well, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks to our staff again for great work as usual, and we appreciate everything they do. Thanks, Paul. Ms. Sue Carlson?
The South Huron Council received the review of the 2022 audited financial statements by Seabuck and Company LLP as presented by Paul Seabuck.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries a 5. Thank you. Okay, welcome Kelly. Hi Kelly, good to have you back. You're not far from the podium. Feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and join you this evening and hopefully put a bow on this work that you've been doing as council members. So I'm just going to walk through a reminder of the process that we went through the course of March, April, and May to get to this point to set priorities for your upcoming term. So next slide. So this is just a review of the process that we walked through together, and starting with some information that was collected from council members and staff to form the basis for consideration of your priorities for the upcoming term. As you know, that information was synthesized and shared with council members at a workshop session back in March, where you went through a process to do a number of things that we'll talk about in terms of criteria for choosing your priorities, reviewing some of those opportunities and honing in on those things that you thought would be most important as priorities for your term. We came back in April then with some input from staff around current state, looking at where those initiatives were at, and that allowed you in April to really hone in on what those key priorities were going to be for your term. And here we are tonight presenting them back to you for your consideration. Next slide. So as you'll remember, one of the things that we did to kick this process off was to look at some principles that would guide your participation in this process. So looking at ensuring open dialogue, that all of council members were participating fully, that you had that opportunity to ask for what you needed in terms of clarification or additional information, and then that foundation of trust and respect with each of your colleagues going forward. Next slide. One of the things that we did at the start of the process was to review the existing mission, vision, and values for the organization. These have been set the year prior, and there was a desire to reflect on those. And so the mission statement at that time, service excellence with a focus on fiscal responsibility, sustainability, and innovation. Next slide. The vision statement, enabling opportunities and progress by championing stewardship, partnerships, and inclusivity. And then next slide, the values that have been previously set: respect, integrity, collaboration, and environment. And I think it's fair to say your deliberation on these, that they were very relevant still going forward, and that they should come back to council for endorsement to be your continued vision, mission, and values. And then we also looked, next slide, at the 4 pillars that had been set in 2022, 2023. And so looking at customer service, focus on your infrastructure, looking for opportunities around strategic growth, and providing leadership. And again, I think there was discussion around these pillars as being still relevant for the work that you do as a council going forward. Next slide reflects the items that we talked about as decision criteria. And there was really great discussion, I think, amongst all council members on these things that you felt were important to reflect on when establishing your priorities, and to continue reflecting on as you make decisions throughout your upcoming term. So those criteria that you set on: living within your means and understanding financial impact was deemed to be important, being outcome focused and ensuring that there's clear measurables in the work that you're doing, being needs-based within your community, being South Huron focused, so looking at the whole of the community, that you're forward-looking and proactive in your priority setting and decision-making, that you're aligned with your legislative responsibilities, that you're leveraging partnerships with other sectors in your community as well as with your neighboring municipalities, and that you're finishing what you've started. And so those became, I think, guiding criteria for the selection of the various priorities that you wanted to set as a council. Next slide. Which leads us to the 5 key priorities that you honed in on. So planning for and managing sustainable growth, focusing on the master fire services plan, looking at recreation and community amenities, looking at infrastructure investment in your asset management plan, and then an emphasis on community safety and well-being. And as you know, within each of those priority areas, there's a number of action items and assignment of responsibilities that were included in a more detailed appendix with your information. So next slide. We're getting near the end. We also talked about those critical enablers. So those activities that will cut across all of your priorities that you wanted to ensure were a focus in the work that you do as council. So communication was talked about, looking at using multiple tactics to enhance communication across your community. Community engagement was deemed to be really important. And I think a recognition that through the pandemic, some of that had fallen off a bit, and there was a real opportunity to focus on that engagement process and ensuring that was an aspect in all of your work. Having effective partnerships with all levels of government, so focusing on government relations and advocacy as appropriate. And then a real focus on partnering within your community and surrounding areas. And a lot of that conversation stemmed around the opportunity to ensure sustainable solutions through partnership going forward. And so you've honed in again on those 4 key enablers to guide your work in the upcoming term. Next slide. In terms of next steps, the goal, I think, was to bring this all back to council tonight for your decision making and acceptance. And then stemming from here, staff would work on the development of more detailed work plans, ensuring that an effective measurement systems and reporting approach was in place for you moving forward. And there would be ongoing communication amongst staff, council, and your community as you execute on these important priorities. And there are a couple of other slides. They're more detailed. I wasn't going to necessarily walk through those, but you can flip to them if you'd like. Here was the more detailed view of those 5 key priority areas. What you're hoping to accomplish, some key actions and tactics, and who's most responsible for executing on those. I can walk through them if you'd like, but they were there for your review as well.
Well done. Well done. Any questions for Kelly? Councillor Need, go ahead.
Just more of a comment. Thank you very much for walking us through that process over those 3 months. It was really good to be able to have some conversations with staff and council about a lot of these issues and kind of hone in on what we'd like to accomplish. And one of the things that I'm happy about is the fact that we're able to continue some of the items that we've started, as well as to build off of some of the successes we've had over the last 4 years despite COVID. So I'm pleased with the priority setting, and thank you very much for taking the time to work with us on that.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. It's like a roadmap for us now. We appreciate you coming in, putting your expertise to this, and helps us very much. Any other comments for Kelly? Okay, let's go ahead, Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Thank you very much, Kelly, for helping us get through all of this. We actually managed, to my way of thinking, to get through quite a bit of work over a 3-month period of time. And also have to thank all of my colleagues at council for giving that big data dump at the very beginning, so that everybody kind of had a sense of what everyone's priorities and what everybody's thinking was all about. So I think that helped us a lot through the whole process. And now with the report coming from the CIO later in the agenda tonight, we just have to adopt it and market it and live with it and make it real. Yeah. So thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. There's nothing further. Thank you very much, Kelly. On behalf of South Huron, we appreciate all your input. You bet. Take care. Ms. Masuha-Collison, please.
The South Huron Council received the council priority setting report as presented by Kelly Gillis of Area Consulting.
And is there a mover? Councillor Neeb, second by Councillor Oak. Discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries a 5. Thank you. Thank you again, Kelly. Okay, and we'll move on to 4.3. And Ms. Masuha-Collison.
This is a presentation to a certified road supervisor to Shane Timmerman, and I believe Mayor Finch, you have, and I believe Don Giberson, general manager as well, is with us as well.
Great. Yeah, and Shane, how are you doing? You're not used to being in front of everybody in live stream, are you? No, you're not nervous at all, are you? No, we'll be nervous for you, but we just want to really thank you for all you've done. And Mr. Giberson and Ms. Masuha-Collison were kind enough to put together some words, and we worked together to bring this together here. So the Association of Ontario Road Supervisors recently awarded Shane Timmermans the Certified Road Supervisors designation. This is a significant milestone in the career of anyone responsible for managing public road assets. The CRS professional accreditation validates a road supervisor's competency with public works technologies and relevant provincial legislation. To obtain the CRS designation, applicants are required to successfully complete the TJ Mahoney Road School courses in construction and maintenance, successfully complete the Public Works Leadership Development Program, that's 8 modules, and have a minimum of 3 years of roads related supervisory experience. Congratulations, Shane, on all you do for the municipality and on this significant accomplishment. And I will turn to members of council to provide congratulatory messages also. Member Councilor, you go ahead.
Congratulations, Shane, on this accomplishment. It's really easy to be up here in a council chair, knowing we have such successful staff and committed staff, and all of the work that you've done outside of regular hours to get the certification is fantastic. So congratulations, and thank you for all that you do for the municipality.
Thank you. And Councilor Oak, do you have any comments?
Just like to echo the comments that have been made, and congratulations, Shane. It's not an easy task, I understand, so congratulations, and look forward to the fruits of all these labors on our infrastructure down the road, so congratulations.
Councilor Denemy.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, congratulations, Shane. That's awesome. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication to our community, and look forward to working with you in the future and making our job a little easier.
And Councilor Juan.
Yes. Okay, Shane, thank you very much and congratulations. I think you're doing a great job for the municipality, and I do have to admit that I totally enjoyed everything that you did during our bus tour recently to educate us all on what you're doing for the municipality. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Mr. Giberson, I'll leave the last word to you before we go to Shane.
Good evening, Mayor Finch and members of council. I just wanted to say congratulations to you, Shane, and a very proud moment to be honored this way. So in the roads business, this is one of these significant accomplishments. So very proud, and thank you for all your hard work. And it's a well-deserved and well-earned recognition. So congrats again.
And Shane, do you have any comments?
I'd like to thank council and staff for all the support that they've given me since I've started here. So thanks very much.
Great. And Ms. Basua-Carlson, do you have any words at all?
Thank you, Shane. And we appreciate all your hard work and all the hard work to do this certification as well. Now, we do have a presentation of certificate, and I'm just hoping that maybe we can get a picture of you, Mayor Finch, presenting it to Shane.
Yes, absolutely. I think we all know that council stands behind their employees. So I'd ask if our members of council could come up here also, and then Shane, I'll be out front doing the presentation. If you could stand right in front of my desk here, please, and thank you. Well, we have I'd like to welcome Mark Nonks to the council tonight, and he's going to present on behalf of Huron County Economic Development regarding the local immigration partnership. Welcome, Mark. You can just come up to the podium here if you like, and feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Thanks for having me. I work for the County of Huron, as you said, as the manager of the Huron County Immigration Partnership. I grew up in Blythe, worked in the humanitarian sector for 10 years in both Asia and Africa before moving back to Canada in 2018. I thought it's always good to know who you're talking to before they start telling you stuff. So there you go. I I've worked for the Immigration Partnership for about 2 years, and the Immigration Partnership is exactly as it says. It's a partnership of organizations, service providers, businesses, and other stakeholders who are working on immigration-related matters. We have 2 employed staff and work with a couple dozen volunteers. Next slide. So a bit more background about the Immigration Partnership. We work within Huron County's Economic Development Department. We are funded by the federal government and the Department of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. We are one of 89 immigration partnerships across Canada. Immigration partnerships cover specific geographic regions. We aim to bring all agencies, service providers, and groups working with newcomers together on a regular basis to share information and coordinate activities where possible. We have existed within Huron County since 2010, and we were one of the first rural regions in Canada to have an immigration partnership. How do we measure success? By the number of newcomers. And when I say newcomers, I'm talking about people who have lived in Canada for 5 years or less and were from somewhere else beforehand. So that's how I define newcomers. Everybody else has a different definition of newcomers, but we define success by the number of newcomers who remain in Huron County. According to the 2021 census, half of the newcomers who moved to Huron County left the area. So if they came from 2011 to 2016, that cohort, half of them left. We want to improve so that our community is a place where newcomers stay. We do have a limitation. We are unable to provide direct one-on-one services to newcomers. There is an organization that receives government funding in Huron County to do that. That's the YMCA of Southwestern Ontario, where they provide personalized settlement support to newcomers. We support group activities and work with the community of organizations, employers, and other stakeholders to strengthen support for newcomers. Next slide. So our goal is to be a welcoming community where newcomers feel supported, like they belong, and are integrated through participation in all spheres of life. And how do we do this? Through identifying and removing barriers that newcomers face, by promoting cultural diversity and identifying strategies to build a sense of belonging, by meeting the diverse needs that newcomers face, whether it is accessible language instruction or interpretation services, finding housing or finding a job, and working with organization and government services and businesses to ensure that services and support is available that meets people where they're at. Next slide. So we focus on this catch-all term of newcomers, but that catch-all term of newcomers is very diverse. So we have people who are coming here to for jobs specifically, or to meet a labor gap, or to start their own businesses. We have others who are sponsored by a family member. We have refugees. We have refugee claimants. So those who have crossed the border and are declaring at the border that they are refugees. And then they have to wait for a period of time before they have their case heard. We have international post-secondary students. We've got lots of temporary workers in this area specifically. And then we have others. Next slide. 2 other populations that we focus on are employers. So those who are already employing internationally educated or trained workers, and those interested in employing international workers, and then along with the public. So people who are interested in the migration and cultural diversity, and we often see those people as our volunteers or potential volunteers. And then we look at the broader community who we want to encourage to become or to be more welcoming, to include newcomers, and to celebrate cultural diversity. Next slide. So I've got this list of key partnerships. So the YMCA of Southwestern Ontario provides that settlement support, that one-on-one personalized support as people are getting into Canada and trying to figure out what government documents to fill out, how to get referred to certain organizations in town. The Center for Employment and Learning, which has a branch here in Exeter, they provide employment support and help people get education around English as another language. Avon Maitland School Board, we are always in contact with them about information sharing and referrals. The Huron County Library hosts a number of events and community meetings. The United Way of Perth Huron, the Goderich Lions Club over the last year has become a very important partner who do fundraising and financial support for newcomers. The Huron Perth Health Unit is also partnering on information dissemination. The Huron Chamber of Commerce and Will Employment, which is an organization that looks directly at strategies to employ immigrants, are key partners. And then we have many faith-based and other community-based organizations who we partner alongside. Next slide. So I looked at statistics for South Huron specifically, and I thought I'd give you a picture of who are the immigrants in your community. There are 775 immigrants in South Huron according to the 2021 census. This is actually down from 2016, where there were 815 immigrants recorded. You should also note that Census Canada does not define temporary workers as immigrants. So we actually have a much broader population here. Next slide. So the top language spoken is obviously English, but what is it after that? French, Dutch, German, Tagalog. Tagalog's the language from the Philippines. Spanish, Lao, and Arabic are key languages. We also identified that 25 languages were recorded in South Huron as a mother tongue, aside from English. Next slide. And this is the slide that in 2011 to 2015, there were 80 people who were defined as new immigrants who had moved to South Huron. 5 years later, only 15 people remained from that cohort. This reveals that many newcomers are leaving South Huron after they initially landed here. We want to turn this around. Next slide. And so when we talk about a welcoming community, we often think, okay, if they have a job and they have a house, that's great. They're set. They're good to go. But it's much more complicated. I call this the big recipe. It's 16 factors about being a welcoming community. And so we're talking about housing, transportation, employment and entrepreneurship opportunities, positive community attitudes towards immigrants of all racial, cultural, and religious backgrounds, access to newcomer service agencies that provide one-on-one support to meet newcomer needs, educational opportunities, both for adults and for children, access to health care, and this includes mental health care, opportunities to form social groups or community groups or to join them, a presence of a wide variety of religious and faith-based organizations, favorable media coverage, access to inclusive public spaces, facilities, and programs such as the libraries, arenas, pools, and tennis courts. So when we say inclusive, this is often interesting because we also have to think about equitable when it comes to inclusive. So if somebody is wearing a non-traditional bathing suit that aligns with their faith, are they going to get in trouble from a pool attendant? Positive, that's an example. So we want to keep those barriers away and have understanding there. Positive relationships with the police and justice system is another component, along with opportunities to become involved as a citizen, to learn about the electoral process, to volunteer with a community organization or take leadership opportunities in the community. Information about key municipal services available to newcomers in languages they understand. A neighborhood where everyone can access services. And that's quite interesting as we think of our very rural areas or our hamlets. You know, these are areas where we do see more people moving into from other countries, but there's some big gaps if they do. So the transportation barrier is a significant one for people who are in those places. And then the final piece of this recipe is the coordination and collaboration among different community organization and government services. So I present this framework to you because it's one that all of the immigration partnerships across Canada are using. And so it's not just ours, it's based on research from a scholar from the University of Western Ontario called Victoria Esses, who really got immigration partnerships off the ground. So we thank her for the work that she's done, and we continue to push towards welcoming communities. So let's go to the next slide, where we're at with some recent activities in South Huron. Ukrainians fleeing war. 66 people have arrived in Huron County that we know of, that we've worked directly with, and 21 of those people are in South Huron. About a year ago, I was here in the library and we were doing a meeting to say, how are we going to respond to this war and the newcomers who might come? And there were a lot of concerns that were raised at that time. We don't have enough housing. We don't have transportation. Are they going to speak our languages? Will they be able to access healthcare services? What we heard was there was a deep desire for people to take action, but nobody really knew who should lead that response. So we took a coordination role. That led to some key activities that volunteers were involved in, and that was transportation, learning English or improving English through conversation circles, social gatherings, because if the first group last summer, there was someone here in Exeter, and there was someone up in Wingham, and there was someone up in Goderich, and we thought, how are these people ever going to meet each other unless we host events for them? So we've hosted a series of monthly get-togethers so people can speak in their language and share experiences. Let's go to the next slide. And so this is a special group of immigrants, as we'll call them, because they're not refugees, they're temporary residents of Canada. They are expected after 3 years to go back to their country. They are eligible for a $3,000 grant from the federal government and a $1,500 per child grant. And they have access to settlement services, healthcare, and education. It is quite a challenge for people, even with $4,500, to put first and last month rent down. So we often see people coming with a host. They arrive at somebody's house, they stay there for a month or two, they get a job, and then they move out to be in their own place. So, next slide. As an immigration partnership, we have noticed with the number of immigrants in South Huron that we have to take a more active role in this community. And we are intending to spend a day a week here for 3 months to see how that goes. If it goes well, we will continue to go for it. We will continue to go forward, but we are currently looking for space. We have a conversation circle that will begin this week at the library. So that's a chance for people who are learning English to speak with native English speakers for an hour. That is Thursday night, and that starts at 6:30 p.m. We will be partnering with the Food Distribution Center and the Cultural Collective. We're also looking at ways to extend our support to international workers, and we're looking for partners to design strategic activities to increase newcomer retention in 2024. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Councillor Need, go ahead.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Finch, to the chair. Just want to go back to one of the slides. And you said that over half left, half of some recent immigrants between, I think, 2015 and 2021.
Yeah.
Was there any data collected as to what were I know you had some of the factors that attract and retain immigrants, but were there any big key issues as to why we saw so many leave?
I would love to do exit interviews with people, just like it were an HR process, but we don't. It is something that we're looking at doing some research, more research into. I would say if we looked at that big long list of what's a welcoming community, it's not just one factor, it's several factors. What's missing in our community? And we also have to acknowledge that rural living is not for everybody. So some people will be coming from cities of millions of people, and then they're in Exeter and they're like, where's the nightlife? What am I going to do here? So it just depends on what your priorities are.
Any other comments? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. I did have one question. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that one of your key partners was the YMCA of Southwestern Ontario, and that at least at this point, they were the only ones who were really in a position to do one-on-one kind of interviewing, counseling.
Yeah, so
support.
that's
provide
right.
Support of some sort. And so one of your asks at the end of the presentation was for seeking a day a week, seeking space.
Yeah.
So I think I heard you say that you weren't providing one-on-one. So I'm just wondering, with that day a week in South Huron, what are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, those are good questions. So I'm already coming a day a week to South Huron, but I'm sitting in the library. I'm meeting with people. There's a translator here who is providing me with translation support into Ukrainian language. I'm doing volunteer orientation meetings with the volunteers who are doing conversation circles. We would also be looking at what other partnerships can we create in this community to make it make sure we're looking at retention and long-term retention. So is there organizations that we should be meeting with that we're not currently meeting? When I have my list of partners up, which South Huron organizations are not there and who should we be there? I know that meeting in person is much more valuable than meeting over Zoom when you're being introduced to people. So those are some of the key things that we would be looking at doing in South Huron.
Okay, so one of them would be expanding the partnerships.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Councillor Vaughn. Any other comments? Yeah, thanks very much, Mark, for taking a leadership role on this. We need immigration. Everybody knows that. I've made contact with a family in town who are from Ukraine, and I'm just amazed. He puts up his phone and he types or he speaks into it, and then he switches over to English for me, and I speak back to him. And it takes a little while, but the husband and I were able to drive around town and show them different amenities within the community that are free to access, right? But just we take a lot of things for granted. Where the person coming from Ukraine has no idea where to start. So I appreciate all you're doing to make them feel welcome. So, any other questions for anyone? Okay, if not seeing you, thank you very much again, Mark, for doing your presentation. If you can just turn your mic off too, please. Thanks. Ms. Masuda Carlson.
South Huron Council receives a delegation from Huron County Economic Development regarding local immigration partnerships as presented by Mark Knox.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Oak, seconded by Councillor Dennehy. Any discussion? Call the question all in favor. And that carries a 5. Thank you. Ms. Masuda Carlson, there's no public meeting. 7.1, please.
The South Huron Council adopts the minutes of the public meeting and regular council meeting of May 1st, 2023 as printed and circulated.
And a mover, please. Councillor Vaughn, second by Councillor Neeb. Discussion? Call the question all in favor. And that carries with 5. Thank you. 8, please. Now mover, please. Moved by Counselor Neeb, seconded by Counselor Denemy. Discussion. I'd just like to thank our folks from the mural project for the work they did on that, and it was a long road, but you guys did a really good job. So I just wanted to commend our staff and Rick and anyone else on the committee that did a lot of work on it. So Joe, I'm sorry, no, I didn't. Yeah, you're involved in so many things, I just assumed. But no, we really appreciate all the work that the staff and the committee did, the members of the public. They were handed a very big job and they did a really good job at it. So thank you. Well done. Councillor Oak.
Yeah, just further to the letter that we received, just wondering whether since this letter, if you've had any further discussion with BMO on anything at this point in time.
Mr. Carlson.
Yeah, through the chair. I don't believe at this time, no.
Thank you. There's no further, if there is any further discussion, call a question, all in favor. And that carries a 5. Thank you. Staff reports, please.
Craig Metzger. That South Huron Council receives a report of Craig Metzger, Senior Planner, Reconsent C-25-2023 Trebner. And that South Huron Council recommends to Huron County Council that consent for file C-25-2023 be granted with conditions as set out in the planner's report dated May 5th, 2023.
And a mover, please. Moved by Counselor Neeb, second by Counselor Denemy. Discussion. Counselor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wondered if Craig is on tonight, and just wondering if he could go through his presentation.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't seen him. There he is. Mr. Metzger, welcome. Do you have anything you can offer?
I do, Mr. Mayor. If you'd like, I do have a presentation that's included in your agenda package if you'd like me to go through it.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will start with sharing my screen. There, I think that's showing up. So yes, this consent application is in Exeter. And before I dive into it in detail, I should point out why it's coming before you as a consent application, because consents are the approval authorities of the County of Huron. Normally, we circulate to the local municipality for comments. If there's no concerns from your staff, agencies, or members of the public, you've delegated the formal commenting responsibility from South Huron to your acting CAO, Ms. Collison. If, however, there are concerns from staff, agencies, or objections or concerns from the public, that's considered a disputed consent, and that needs to come before you as council to make a formal recommendation to the county on this particular application. And that's what's happened tonight. When we circulated the application for comments, we did get concerns and objections from members of the public. And so we're bringing it before you to provide your formal comments to the county on the application. So it's at the west end, southwest corner of Exeter, and the severance is to sever land that's currently designated designated residential from the remainder of the property, which is designated agricultural. So we have the lands to the eastern end are inside the Exeter settlement area. The agricultural lands are outside of Exeter. There's also a 20-meter wide strip of land at the south end of the parcel to be severed. That's to be dedicated to South Huron for a future road. And there are some separate planning applications, the zoning bylaw amendment applications already been received. There will be a forthcoming site plan control application, and they propose that the new lot be used for a long-term care facility. So I mentioned it's in the southwest corner of Exeter. This line here is roughly the boundary of Exeter. To the east is Exeter, the Exeter settlement area. To the west is the agricultural lands on this farm. So the proposal is, if you look around here, this land would be developed. It's designated residential, but to do so, it needs to be separated from the rest of the farm. The lands are bordered by the Snyder Crescent subdivision here, so it's a residential subdivision. There's about 8 lots bordering it. Your sewage pumping station is up at the northeast corner of the area to be severed. There's a single detached lot borders the retained lands. And then to the south of the lands to be severed is the Exeter Christian Reformed Church. So this gives us the area. This is the lands to be retained. It's roughly 100 acres, a little bit less than that. The lands to be severed, about 4 acres, and that includes this 20-meter wide strip across the south end of the property. Here you can see on the air photo, this would be the lands. The red would be the proposed future long-term care facility in subsequent applications, which you'll be seeing in terms of the rezoning application. And then this green area would be a future road allowance. And it lines up with what looks like a vacant lot here in the Snyder Crescent subdivision. But in fact, that's not a lot, it's a block, and it was set aside for a future road. So there would be a road along the south end that lines up with Summertime Street. And then here's you can better see the houses that are next to the proposed severed parcel. So looking at the parcel to be severed, this is at the south end, so just at the edge of the church property and looking to the north. The lands are currently cropped as part of the farm. And then this is the rear of all the abutting single detached residential houses. So there's fences, some cases there's very little, so there's hedges, trees, and then beyond that sheds, and then the actual homes, many of which are 2-story homes, but there is some 1-story homes as well. This photo is standing on Snyder Crescent and looking west towards across Block 42, the future road allowance, to the lands that would be dedicated to the municipality, which would be in this location as well. And then the application did include a conceptual site plan for that long-term care facility. This is turned, north is actually to the left of the screen. And you see that it's a fairly narrow building pushed towards the western portion, so away from the abutting residential lots and a parking lot in between. So that's a concept, just to let you know that, in fact, a facility of this size could be fit on the area that's being severed. So as I mentioned, the application was circulated. In terms of agencies, it was circulated to the Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority. That's because there's a municipal drain at the north end of the property, abutting the property. A portion of the property is within the floodplain. The Conservation Authority responded that they have no concerns. They did note that prior to development taking place, there's going to need to be additional lot grading and drainage information provided based on whatever use is proposed, in this case is a long-term care facility, as well as stormwater management requirements would need to be reviewed and met by the authority. Your own South Huron staff have no objections. They did suggest 2 conditions. One, because of that municipal drain to the north, there will need to be a municipal drain assessment apportionment between the severed and retained parcels, which is standard when the lands are within a municipal drainage area. And then second, that the 20 meters at the south end be dedicated as a future road extension to the municipality. So no concerns or objections from agencies or municipal staff. We did receive comments from the public. There were 8 responses or sets of responses received. 1 was supportive, 1 had no objections, and then 6 had either objections or were indicating that they were not supportive of the application. There were a range of consent or concerns raised. They're all on the screen there, related to traffic, privacy, stormwater management, lighting, noise, impacts on your infrastructure, that's sewage and water services. What might be the impact of a large building in the proposed location in terms of with snowstorm and snowstorms coming off from the west? Concern that there would be insufficient parking, a loss of security, loss of property value, concern with the size of the building and whether alternative site locations had been examined. Also related to building size would be shadowing from the size of the building, and then a concern about how quickly the process was proceeding and how it related to your strategic plan. In terms of the policies to look at, there's the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and then your own South Huron official plan. Provincial policy statement directs growth and development primarily to your service settlement areas, and your Exeter would be your not only your biggest service settlement area, but it has the most variety and range of services available in it. So it's where most of the development is directed within South Huron. The first step in that process is to separate those lands that have been identified for development from lands that have not been identified for development. And the lands that have been identified not for development are those agricultural lands to the west. So this particular application for the severance of the lands identified for development from those that are not to be developed is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The county official plan has similar policies about directing development to Exeter as a service settlement area, and the application does conform with the county OP. Your own South Huron official plan also has similar policies, but it does go into more detail, one of which is the parcel needs to have access. And in this case, access will be over a proposed future road allowance that's going to be created as part of the application. We do know that municipal services are available, and a development agreement is proposed as a condition of the consent approval. And your official plan expressly permits severance applications for the purpose of assembling land for future development, which is what we have here. Separate the lands that can be developed from those that can't be developed, and then move on to future planning applications around what that development will look like. The public comments on this particular page that you see on the screen, many of those are related primarily to the future development of the severed parcel, not the actual severance of the parcel. They're concerned with the particular use of the parcel, what type of residential use occurs. And that's addressed through the zoning bylaw amendment application, which has been received. It's in the process of being circulated. And that process has its own public meeting process in terms of with public consultation. That public meeting is being scheduled for early June. So there will be a public meeting held for the public to probably again raise these items and for those items to be discussed and addressed as part of making the determination of whether a long-term care facility as proposed is appropriate within this residentially designated parcel of land. There were some comments received. I mentioned about the speed with which the development process related to the severance was going as well. And just to point out, there were some earlier activities outside of the process. The applicant held a public open house on April 5th to introduce the proposed development to the neighborhood. It was open to all the area residents, the neighbors, to attend. It was virtual, so it was done through Zoom, and it was an opportunity for the neighbors to ask some initial questions, find some more information about what's being proposed. And that open house is not part of the formal process. It's not a statutory requirement under the Planning Act. So it was held, the public was informed, and then we started the formal process of informing all the abutting neighbors of the severance application, and they were able to submit comments, which is the summary that you see on the screen here. There were also comments about the future road network and the possibility, move to the next screen here, the possibility of having a road from Huron Street running north to access the lands. The key piece here is this is the boundary of Exeter. If we're going to expand Exeter further to the west for something like a road, there's a process that's required to do that. At this point, it would require a comprehensive review and assessment of whether that is the appropriate direction to proceed or not. If there was a road to come in from Huron Street north, and we did have comments from the lands to the north of the development that are within Exeter, that a linkage would be helpful. This area of the drain has a fairly wide floodplain. It comes back to about here. Here, it narrows as you get farther west. So it would be easiest if there was a street, if it did come up, that it crossed somewhere over here. So much farther to the west than what we currently have. But in any event, these lands are not planned for development at this point in time in your official plan. So in summary, the majority of the concerns raised are about the use, raised by the public about the use, and they're to be addressed through the zoning bylaw amendment process. There is recommended conditions, standard conditions, but also the ones dealing with the municipal drain assessment and the dedication of the 20-meter wide strip across the south end for a future road allowance. And my report recommends that this application be recommended for approval to the county with those conditions as contained in the report. So, Mr. Mayor, that's a quick run through the slides, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Metzger. That's well done. Any questions? Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Mayor. You show that block where the proposed road is going to go through, and it comes through off of Snyder. Now, just the block that's between the house and that church there is a long block. Is that a road block too, or is that actually a building site, Craig, on your map? If you could pull it back up there, I'm just to show where I'm meaning.
Just let me find it here.
Yeah, right. That right there, that long sliver there that comes out to Huron Street. Is that proposed for a road allowance someday? Or is that an actual block? I'm just thinking it looks like a block similar to the one that comes off of Snyder there. I just wondered if that was similar.
It's not a proposed road allowance, and this is a good example of the limitations of the parcel fabric that the county has. The parcel fabric is not always property lines, and in this case, this line is not a property line. The church property includes this strip. And what happened is east of this is the Exeter settlement area, but it's also the former boundaries of the town of Exeter. While west of it, we have the boundaries, we have the former township of Stephen. So from an impact standpoint, this parcel fell into two municipalities and was assessed part to Stephen, part to Exeter. So this boundary should probably disappear because now all the taxes come to South Huron. So it's a remnant from the past. So it's not a road allowance. And in fact, there's a natural gas line that runs through this, a high pressure gas line that runs just west of the severed lands.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Metzger? Okay, you're not seeing any. We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries a 5. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Metzger. I think you're back up again. 9.1.2.
The South Huron Council receives a report of Craig Metzger, Senior Planner, regarding the proposed provincial planning statement 2023 and Bill 97 changes to the Planning Act. And the South Huron Council directs staff to submit comments to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing on the proposed provincial planning statement 2023 as outlined in the report.
And do we have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Councillor Oak, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Craig, thank you for putting that report together. Very detailed, and thanks for including the last council resolution comments in there on the PPS statement. That's one of the most concerning ones for me, being involved in agriculture. Could you just maybe slightly comment on the proposal for or what's being proposed for rural severances? I guess is it the primary residence plus 2 more? Now, if there isn't a residence on a 100-acre farm today, is there potential for 3 residences then on that, or 3 severances on that farm?
Mr. Metzger?
In response, yes, and that is very concerning. The number of new non-agricultural lots that could be created and their impact on our agricultural system. As you see in my report, there's a graphic that shows the impacts from an MDS standpoint on trying to site a new agricultural barn, livestock barn. We already see them moved back off the road if there's a farmhouse on the other side of the road. But if there's more spread out along, it tends to push the barns even farther back, which results in increased cost, both in terms of getting electricity to that barn and then maintenance costs in terms of getting access through the winter, plowing snow, what have you, back to the barn. So very concerning that there'll be potential for rough calculation we did at the department level, thousands, up to 3,000 new residential lots potentially in South Huron as of right. And important to note that you can't, in your official plan as proposed, restrict that. You can't go any farther than what would be in the provincial planning statement.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neeb, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Finch, and thank you for the report. It's pretty alarming. 40 years of land use planning is kind of being thrown out the window. This scattered residential development that's going to be proposed goes against everything that really, since I've been on council, we've been advocating for and protecting agricultural land. So I'm extremely disappointed to see this being something that the province is proposing. Hopefully they heed our comments, and I also hope that other municipalities take note and speak up as well. One question, in your report, it mentioned specialty crop areas, and I'm just wondering what those are. Are those do municipalities decide what's a specialty crop area? Does the province decide what a specialty crop area is? Yeah.
Mr. Metzger?
Mayor Feet, bench to Councillor Neeb. It's actually a combination. The province provides guidance around what would qualify as a specialty crop area. It's primarily around tender fruits, so and vegetable growth in large areas like the Holland Marsh, down in the Niagara Peninsula. Close by, we would have the Thetford Marsh, would qualify as well, and it would be designated in your official plan, but in line with guidance from the province, primarily OMAFRA, around what would qualify or not qualify.
Okay, any other comments?
No, thank you very much, Craig.
Any other members of council wish to make comment? Thank you very much, Mr. Metzger. Well done. And again, this is a complete change from what the province has been doing, allowing all these severances to take place. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out at the end. So thank you very much for your presentation. And so we have a mover and a seconder, I believe. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries a 5. Thank you. Moving along, 9.2 and then 9.3.1.
The South Huron Council received the report from Shane Timmerman, Manager of Transportation Services, and Alyssa Keller, Manager of Environmental Services, 2023 request for proposals for engineering services, and that South Huron Council accepts the proposal received from GM Blue Plan Engineering and authorizes the award of a professional services contract to GM Blue Plan Engineering for the following projects: design approvals and tender preparation for Victoria Avenue East reconstruction in the amount of 40,880 plus HST, and future services for tendering, contract administration, and construction inspection in the amount of 107,800 plus HST, subject to council approval at a future capital budget. Design approvals and tender preparation for recoding interior of Exeter Water Tower in the amount of $19,760 plus HST, and future services for tendering, contract administration, and construction inspection in the amount of $29,220 plus HST, subject to council approval at a future capital budget. And that South Huron Council accepts the proposal received from BM Ross and Associates and authorizes the award of a professional services contract to BM Ross and Associates for the following projects: design approvals, tender preparation for repairs to Morrison Line Bridge, structure number 3003 in the amount of $22,800 plus HST, and future services for tendering. Contract administration and construction inspection in the amount of $20,600 plus HST, subject to council approval of a future capital budget. Design approvals and tender preparation for repairs to Huron Street Bridge structure number 3044 in the amount of $14,000 plus HST, and future services for tendering, contract administration, and construction inspection in the amount of $14,600 plus HST, subject to council approval of a future capital budget. Then design approvals and tender preparation for the Gore Road water main upgrade in the amount of $30,205 plus HST, and future services for tendering, contract administration, and construction inspection in the amount of $44,260 plus HST, subject to council approval of a future capital budget.
And is there a mover? Councillor Denemy, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries with 5. Thank you very much. Thanks, folks. Okay, glad you didn't have to read that twice. Yeah. Okay, 9.4.1.
I think Stacy's given me another one here, but anyway, that South Huron Council receives a report of Stacy Jeffrey, Community Relations Manager, regarding this special event application as Exeter Sesquicentennial 150th, and that South Huron Council approved the special event application Exeter Sesquicentennial 150th in principle, and that South Huron Council authorized the road closure request of Main Street from Huron Street to Wellington Street on July 1st, 2023 from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. for a parade. And that South Huron Council waived the special event application and administration fee in the amount of $100. And the South Huron Council waived the fees associated with the rental of the South Huron Recreation Center. And that South Huron Council approves the use of the municipal town hall, specific to the use of council chambers and Verity Room, outside of regular operating hours for Saturday, July 1st, from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And that South Huron Council declare the 2023 Exeter Sesquicentennial 150th event to be municipally significant.
And a mover, please. Councillor Denemy, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, all 5. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. Thanks, Stacy, also, by the way. Sometimes I forget to say. Anyways, moving right along. 9.4.2. Oh, sorry. Sir, go ahead, Ted.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not on this resolution, sorry. On the previous one on 9.1.2. And I support the recommendation. I just wondered if there was a potential where we could add that we would circulate it to MPP Lisa Thompson and other municipalities.
Yeah, and I can tell you at the county level, we've already endorsed that.
Okay,
if that helps, but if you'd like.
but I
turn-
think, you know, I'd like to say that, you know, that we would send this to our local MPP as well.
And look
Our
to,
comments on this, but that's just, I'm throwing it out there whether we could do an amendment or not.
I'll turn to Ms. Masul Collison for procedural process.
I'll just put a note on that and we will add that to the list. So MPP Lisa Thompson and all municipalities in Ontario
Well,
or
I
just
think-
specific?
I think it's a major issue and especially in the rural communities, but that's
Okay.
just my thought.
We can certainly do that. We'll just add that in.
Okay.
Do we need a mover at all or anything?
No, that's fine because staff will be circulating as well as the county. So when we circulate it, we will endeavor to do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, 9.4.2 then.
Let South Huron Council accept the report from Scott Curry, Manager of Communications and Strategic Initiatives, exploring options for 421 Canada Ave, Huron Park for information, and that this report be referred to the Fire Services Advisory Committee for information.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Denemy. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries with 5. Thank you. 9.4.3.
The South Huron Council receives a report from M. Delbridge, Acting Treasurer, read 2022 audited financial statements. And the South Huron Council adopts the audited financial statements as presented by Paul Seebach and Company.
And a mover, please. Councillor Neeb, or sorry, Councillor Denemy and then Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Councillor Oak.
Yes, just like to thank Maggie. Thank you for taking over the role from Sandy and finalizing the year-end statements, and based on the auditor's report, everything went smoothly. So congratulations.
Yeah, I think we all echo that. Thanks very much, Maggie. Just a tremendous job as usual. And we get spoiled with your expertise and your professionalism. So thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, we call the question. All in favor? And that carries a 5. Terrific. 9.4.4.
And this is a companion report to the presentation we had today. That South Huron Council receives a report of Rebecca Msuya-Collison, Acting CAO, titled Council Priorities 2023 to 2026, and that council adopt the attached list of priorities and that departmental work plans be developed in accordance with these directions, and that council reaffirm the 2022-2023 mission, vision, values, and pillars.
And a mover, please. Councillor Vaughn, seconded by Councillor Oak. Discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 5. Thank you. Are there any notices of motions this evening?
There are none.
Thank you. And no items for discussion arising from previous meetings. Are there any at this point? Okay, not seeing any. New business. Okay, Mayor and Councillor comments and announcements. Any comments from members of council at this time? Okay, Councillor Neeb.
On the 24th of May, South Huron District High School, they're putting on a trivia night. I'm going to be part of a team, and I think they're still looking for participants. So if you're interested, just contact the high school. Yeah, should be a good time.
Yeah, that's for sure. No other comments? Councillor Oak.
Just a comment that just to for the community to drive safe out there with all the farm equipment on the road these days. There's a lot of near misses that I've witnessed in the last few days. So just keep a lookout for the slow moving vehicle signs out there, please.
Okay, thank you. So as far as my comments go, I attended the retirement of Dave Renner, Chief Dave Renner at the Blue Water Fire Hall the other day, and the grand opening for the fire hall. Well attended. Mayor Klopp did a nice job in his role, and kudos to Chief Renner for all those years of service. So we're in good hands with our partners to the north, and we look forward to many years of success with that the fire department again, as usual. Bikes 360 had an open house on Saturday. I also attended that in the morning and then checked back in with them in the afternoon. They had a good turnout. They're quite happy and they're quite happy to be in South Huron. I've got really not much else I can talk about at this time. So if there's nothing further, move on. Okay, there's communications. You want anything pulled, just ask for it to be pulled. Ms. Masuda calls.
14.1. 14.2. 14.3.
We'll pull that.
14.4. 14.5. 14.6. 14.7. 14.8.
Pull that one, please.
14.9. 14.10. 14.11. 14.12. 14.13. 14.14. 14.15.
So under 14.3, I'm available to go to that event. If I get support from council to go. Or do you need a resolution for that, Madam?
Yes, I'll take one.
Okay, is there a mover that would support me in going? Councillor Vaughn, thank you. Councillor Neeb, any discussion on that? Call the question all in favor. And that carries the 5. Thank you. 14.4, the compliance results. Very good for compliance results. Well done, Ms. Masul calls. Any comments?
They're very well done. And we have our acting AMC, one of ours anyway. Chief Becker's on here, and it was actually Chad Krieger, who's our CMC, that has kind of led us through this whole process. I don't know if Chief Becker has any comments that he'd like to add.
Always like to hear from the chief. He's there. See him. Okay. No, it's just good to know. Oh, there he is, Chief. Well done.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can hear me there. Sorry, my computer was slow getting online there.
Yeah, no, great job. And if you want to enlighten us a bit, that'd be great. But we just really appreciate all the work you've put into this with our friends there. So go ahead.
Yeah, so as the report indicated, and was sent off to the CMC Chad Krieger that we're compliant and good to go here. We've made lots of headway over the last year and looking forward to keeping going there.
Yeah, that's well done for sure. We appreciate all the work that the fire department and all the emergency services do working together. So kudos to you and your staff again and to the working relationships you have. Any other comments for Chief at all? Great, thanks, Chief. Okay, moving right along then, 14.8, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just in regards to the correspondence, just wondered if staff had any comments on this item.
Mr. Silvercolson.
We have some preliminary comments we have had. There was a site visit, and there's likely going to be some future work at some point, but staff are working with the resident to find a solution for this year anyway.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anything else asked to be pulled. Are you aware of anything further? I don't believe so. So we'll go to our recommendation.
But South Huron Council received communication items not otherwise dealt with.
And a mover, please. Councillor Danby, second by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor. That carries the 5. Thank you. 15.
But South Huron Council proceeds in closed session at 7:34 PM for the purpose of addressing litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose in accordance with subsection 239 2E and F of the Municipal Act, Ontario Land Tribunal, and that the acting CAO clerk, Director of Building and Planning Services, Chief Building Official, and Municipal Solicitor remain in attendance.
And a mover, please. Counselor Counselor Denemy and then Counselor Need. Any discussion? Call a question. All in favor? And that carries with 5. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to close session now, as mentioned. So I'll ask all members of the public in the gallery if they could just excuse themselves out the second set of doors, please. Welcome back, everyone. We're item number 16, report from closed session. And I can report as chair that council met in closed session to consider matters it is permitted to do so under the Municipal Act and is listed on today's council agenda. The following items were considered during the closed session: matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications and the minutes of February 6, 2023. As a result of our closed session today, the closed meeting minutes of February 6, 2023 have been approved, and the following resolution will be considered by council in open session. Madam, Ms. Masuda-Carlson, can you read the recommendation, please?
That the recommendation contained in confidential item 3.1 be adopted, and direction is given to staff and municipal solicitor to proceed.
Moved by Councillor Denby, second by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 5. Thank you very much. Moving right along to 17.1 bylaws. Ms. Masuda-Carlson, please.
But South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 22-2023 to provide for the adoption of the 2023 tax rates and to further provide for penalty and interest in default of payment thereof.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Denby, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 5. 17.2, please.
South Huron Council give first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 23-2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 69-2018 of the municipality of South Huron for lands described as part lot 5, Lake Road East concession, Stephen Ward, municipality of South Huron.
And a mover, please. Councillor Oak, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 5. Thank you. 17.3.
But South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 24-2023, being a bylaw to adopt a new municipal policy entitled Outdoor Patio on Municipal Lands and Temporary Extension of Liquor License Policy.
And a mover, please. Councillor Denby, second by Councillor Neeb. Discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 5. Thank you. 18.1, please.
But South Huron Council give first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 25-2023, being a bylaw to confirm matters addressed at the May 15th, 2023 council meeting.
And a mover, please. Councillor Neeb, second by Councillor Denby. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries. That's okay. Carries with 5. Thank you. Ms. Masuda-Carlson.
Okay. The South Huron Council hereby adjourns at 8:34 p.m. to meet again on June 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. or at the call of the chair.
Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Denby. No discussion. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 5.